Speak what is true. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. I am found, I am yours, I am You're not Julius Caesar, okay?
Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart. Here's my heart. Here's my life. Here's my willingness to surrender. Surrendering to the voice of Spirit, to the guidance and the direction of Spirit. Tonight we allow ourselves to put the day aside, our concerns, our fears, our judgments, and just come to this present moment together. This wonderful family of spiritual companions, mighty companions, kindred spirits. Let us pray for one another, pray for ourselves, pray for this world, pray for our community, pray for our country. Breathing deeply into our hearts, feeling our hearts as conduits of the higher frequency that's needed in the world right now. Let's just take a few moments to be grounded, to be truly present. Nice deep breath. And so, hello, happy Thursday. It is, something's going on back there. We're gonna pause it, we're gonna try and pause it. Oh, that's a perfectly good place to pause.
Yeah.
Somebody's in prayer posture. How perfect is that? So happy Thursday, happy Holy Sacred Thursday. How wonderful to be together tonight. Every week just feels brand new to me to be together with my spiritual family. Even though it's weekly, it feels like we could do this every day. It feels like if we had an ashram somewhere. Any benefactors listening? If we had an ashram somewhere, and people could just come and go and be in a state of prayerfulness, in a place of connecting with the light and remembering that you are the light. If you have that every day, then you would have no doubt of who you really are. And hopefully you have those moments every day. The problem is sometimes we don't take it into the full day, and we forget who we are, and sometimes we forget who others are. And so tonight we're gonna talk a little bit about a concept that is generally accepted in most religions as a concept of condemnation, which is the idea of sin. Now, one of the things I do like about religion in general is that a lot of religions have the concept of introspection around sin, so that you make amends and that you make an atonement within yourself and with God and with other people. And this, the recovery program does that too. They have the fourth step, which is all about making amends, making an inventory of yourself. So what we're going to talk about today doesn't exclude the need to be introspective. In fact, it's an opportunity for us to look deeply within ourselves, but not to condemn ourselves, not to feel afraid of being condemned, afraid of some judgment that's going to come along. So that's the fine line that we're distinguishing here tonight. We haven't been in the workbook for a while. For the past few weeks, we've been looking at the text. So tonight we're going to look briefly at this concept of sin, and it led us into 251 and on. So just briefly, I want to look at, if anybody's looking at their book, it's after lesson 250. There's a section that called What is Sin? Hello everybody. Hello everybody who's watching. It's good to have you here. We have folks here. Just a reminder that Thursday, October 1st, we are opening a healing space. And so we hope to be together. But I do need to know who is coming, because we cannot have more than 8 people in that space. Perhaps 10, depending on how I can set it up. So you'll have to let me know in a private text if you intend on being there on Thursday, October 1st. And then we'll talk about the rules and regulations and everything we need to do to keep the place sanitized and up to COVID regulations.
How much ahead of time do you want to know?
I would say at least a week or within that week. So I'll be sending out texts and reminders to everybody so they can let me know if they're coming. I know all of you will be there, so that leaves us maybe just four more seats, maybe 5. So what is sin? So it's the paragraph that follows lesson 250. It says, what is sin? But we're not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to go to the last paragraph, which is paragraph 5. It says, how long, O Son of God, will you maintain a game of sin? Shall we not put away these sharp-edged children's toys? How soon will you be ready to come home? Perhaps today. There is no sin. Creation is unchanged. Would you still hold return to heaven back? How long, O Holy Son of God, how long? So the question is, how long in our spiritual path do we want to hold on to the vision of ourselves as guilty and unworthy and sinful? And how long do we want to hold others to that view also? It's not to say that we don't need to make corrections within ourselves if there's things that need to be corrected. But what it's saying that is, if we hold ourselves to this image of sin, to this condemnation of self, then we won't move past it in order to do the work that we really need to do as those of us who want to bring more light into the world. If you think that you're not worthy, if you think you can't do it, and if you hold yourself up as guilt-ridden and sinful and you can't see past that, you can't forgive yourself, then you will not have the capacity to be the light bearer, to be the instrument of peace, because you'll be too busy seeing yourself as something other than that. And so the frequency is stepping up right now. I don't know if you can feel it, but things are changing. It's not just because we're in a pandemic. It's because the world is changing, the earth is changing, the energy is changing, and we all have to try and keep up. We have to be introspective and aware of ourselves. And so if we're going to spend a lot of time just beating up ourselves and calling ourselves sinners because we've made mistakes, then we won't make the corrections that will allow us to move into a higher way of being. If you continue to see yourself as a bad person, then you're just going to repeat patterns that are going to make you feel bad about yourself. And so what we want to do is to have this vigilance, within ourselves of what it is we're thinking, what we're doing, and how we're responding even to our own thoughts, so that we can raise our consciousness. Right here, the Course is telling us that sin is insanity. The concept of sin is insanity if we are going to just live with this concept of ourselves as being so bad, or as of anyone else as being so bad. So in order to sort of recover from that, because we all come from that, we almost feel like we have to see ourselves as sinners in order to repent so that we can be forgiven. But what A Course in Miracles is telling us is that we are the forgivers of ourselves. We have to be able to make our corrections so that we can then see ourselves as forgiven. Not in a grandiose sort of I can do whatever I want because of the Course in Miracles sort of way, but as a rigorously honest, be brutally honest with yourself. Be willing to look at yourself. Where are the areas that need correction? Sin is seen in A Course in Miracles as a mistake in need of correction. So where do we need correction? If we can see it, if we can be honest with ourselves, if we can really look at it, then we can make those corrections instead of hiding from it or instead of going into repetitious dysfunctional behaviors. This is a way to really address even those subconscious messages that have been so pesty, that have caused us to have automatic trigger reactions. So the reason I'm only just doing one little paragraph on that is because I want to talk a little bit about the Ken Wapnick perspective. And again, this is on the Ken Wapnick commentary. It is referencing this section on sin. And what he says is, we are at home in God, awake as spirit, right? Because we're always talking about how we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So if we're spiritual beings having a human experience, then we have within us all that is needed to awaken into that spirit self. To recognize, if I'm spirit having a human experience, then I can also have my spiritual experience. I can get in touch with that part of me that is spirit. So he says, we are at home in God when we are awake as spirit. We are in a non-dualistic state. There is no subject or object, no need to protect our identity by making up a body to see sin. This ensures that the ego's illusory existence is never recognized. In other words, when we can get to that place of truly connected divine bliss, then we're not looking at the world with ego eyes. We're looking at the world with Christ's vision. Even if it's just for a moment. Like, I don't think that any of us are going to live this way 24/7. It would be nice. I mean, it might be a way to remind ourselves constantly during a time of dedicated contemplation so that we can eventually do that. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that if I go on Oprah and she asks me, I'm going to have to say that my mind wanders. My mind wanders every now and then. Got some ego stuff in there still. So it says, when sin has gone, what need is there for perception? There is nothing to see. The world of separation disappears. First, in true perception of shared interest, the innocent face of Christ. And then beyond this holy perception into the presence of God. And then he has a quote here from the text, and you don't have to go find it right now, but if you want to make a note of it, it's chapter 26 in the text, section 4. It says, the sinless must perceive that they are one, for nothing stands between them to push the other off. And in the space that sin left vacant, do they join as one in gladness, recognizing what is part of them has not been kept apart and separate. I mean, there are people who just hold grudges. I mean, I had a conversation with someone who had been out of a relationship for 5 years and every day continued to complain about that person. And I was thinking, well, what have you been doing for these past 5 years? You know, I mean, I can understand maybe a couple months of grieving, maybe a year and a half of being upset, going through, you know, anger and grief and whatever else it is. But at some point we have to recognize that whoever was in our lives, for whatever reason, for whatever choices we made to have those people in our lives, we have to forgive what went wrong in order for us to be free, in order for us to be able to have a life of peace. I'm not saying it's easy, but 5 years does seem to be like a long time to hold on to a grudge. And some people hold on to grudges for longer than that, for 10 years, for 20 years. And I asked about forgiveness once, and this person said, well, if I could have done that, I would have by now. And I thought, this is not a dedication to finding peace within yourself. I didn't say that out loud, but that's a thought I had. But I also had to look at myself. Like, where do I hold grudges? You know, we all have to look at ourselves. Where do we have that part of us that's holding on to something that's keeping us from being in a place of peace?
I think
And
it becomes an addiction, almost.
the grudge can be like an addiction?
Yes, like the chaos that it causes and the adrenaline that it gets going and all that.
Yeah.
Can be like addictive, and there's some kind of release in the brain or something that keeps it flowing.
So Lisa was just saying maybe the regret, the resentment might be like an addiction. And I do think there's a part of us that's afraid to let that go, because then we have to feel sad, we have to feel the loss. Maybe we not ready to feel the grief, you know. But all of that is the gunk, right? It's all the gunk that's clogging us up. You can call it resentment, but it really is grief. It really is sadness. You know, anger is just sadness, right? We can all follow these lines to what is really going on deep in our hearts. And that's where we get rigorously honest with ourselves to find out, what is it really? If I'm not mad, then what will I be? Maybe I'll have to grieve, and I haven't been really willing to feel the grief of loss. And so that is a mistake in need of correction. That is the sort of thing that the Course is calling a sin. Not the way most religions say sin, like you must be punished for this, or you have to pay for your sin, or there's going to be some retribution. It's not that. It's within ourselves to make the decision, to do the heavy lifting, to do the hard work of really digging that stuff out and being honest with ourselves. about what's really going on. What are we afraid of? And he says, here you will see the face of Christ arising in the place of what? In the place of your anger, in the place of your resistance. What could behold the face of Christ and not recall his Father as he really is? And here we use Father to mean whatever your idea of God is, whatever source energy is for you. So if we can get to that point where we take our resentments and turn it into vision, to be able to see Christ in that person who hurt us, sometimes, like you said, we might be addicted to not doing that, because, well, what if I see them as Christ and they go on and they don't apologize and all of that?
You feel better when you're resenting somebody.
Right. So the non-dualistic perspective would be that what we then have put out is returned to us. Maybe that person's not going to come crawling on their knees, on their bloody knees with an apology, but we are putting into motion our availability to be in peace, to be a peacemaker, and it will be brought back to us. It's just like if you see that circle of light and energy coming in and you send it out into the world and it comes back to you, and you send it out into the world, you go, oh, well, except that one person that I still have resentment for. Let me hold my light away from that. No, we're just sending it out and receiving it back. Sending it out and going, oops, maybe you, maybe not. Okay, just send it out and bring it back. Imagine if anybody that resented us had the power to do that to us, that had the power to say to God, you know what? Bless everybody except Lori. Imagine if we all had that power. We don't have that power. What we do have is the power to send that loving light out, not just to who we select, but to everyone, even those who hurt us, that we see as being the sinner.
It reminds me, I was saying this to Paul today too, it reminds me of the opposite of the I am rubber, you are glue. It's you are rubber, I am glue. Everything I say bounces off of you and
sticks.
Me or whatever. It's the opposite of it.
That we forget.
Yeah.
That we forget because, holding resentment against another person isn't stopping them from having their life.
Right.
It's stopping us from being at peace.
Yeah.
And so, they could be happily, merrily tiptoeing through the fields, and we're home saying, I'm going to withhold my love. I'm going to withhold my forgiveness. I'm going to withhold my love and light. So, who are you hurting? Who are you hurting? This is a law. This is a universal law of psychodynamics and quantum physics. What we put out. We want our own channels to be clear and energetic and pure. So there's another section that he talks about. That reference was on chapter 26. He has another reference from chapter 19, which is the attainment of peace versus the attraction to guilt. So when you have the attraction to guilt, it's kind of like once you find out and you realize within yourself that you're holding all this resentment, you do feel a little guilty about it, and sometimes you end up punishing yourself. And then what do you do? And it's a vicious cycle. Then you end up drawing somebody to yourself who does the same thing that the other person did that you were upset about in the first place. This is why we want to clear it out. We want to clear it out. We clear it out by forgiving ourselves, and forgiving whatever we perceive as being like something so bad. So there's a section on chapter 19 that says the attraction to guilt, which is in opposition to the attainment of peace. And it says, it's in this section, Jesus describes our choice to send out messages of fear or love. So our anger message, our withholding message is the same as fear or love. These are our choices. The former, the first, will bring back perceptions of guilt, sin, and blame, the fear projection. So we're projecting it out, we're projecting out our resentment, we're getting it back. It's energy exchange. We're getting it back. So then, the next person that comes along, whether it's a job situation or a romantic situation, you're going to find that it repeats itself. And you're going to stand there feeling like a victim. You're not a victim. You're not a victim. I have a friend who had this job. Oh my God, she could not stand her manager. And she was complaining to me about her manager. And she was trying to make a decision between going on her own, which he was perfectly capable of doing, or getting another job. And the manager's name, let's say the manager's name was Sue. Names have been changed. So I said to her, there's a Sue everywhere. Everywhere you go, there's going to be a Sue. So you have to decide, do you want to work with Sue, and who are you going to be in the relationship with Sue, or are you just going to make this other decision to go off on your own? Because if you are going to go get another job, just remember, there's going to be a Sue. There just is. We are going to have those bumps and bruises, those adversaries, those difficulties. We're going to have a lot of very familiar repetition of behavioral issues interacting because we have not yet forgiven the resentment that we had in the first place. It's just a mistake in need of correction. You don't have to beat yourself up over this. It's not easy. It's just something to raise your consciousness about that. And he even says here, the latter, meaning the love, returns with perception of love, which is what it's called for. It's a mistake. It's a mistake instead of a sin. These mistakes are not of the body, but of the mind making its wrong choice. So what we mean by the body, meaning not the personality, but the mind, right? So we can always say, forgive my mistakes. They were of my mind and not my heart. You have a good heart. You have a good heart. You didn't mean to hurt anyone, but you're hurting yourself if you're holding on to resentments of someone having hurt you. Did you want to say something? You had something about that? So we have some folks here. I have to read their expressions. We all know the story of Abraham and Isaac. Many, I would imagine, if you were born in the United States, you were probably raised either Jewish or Christian, or atheist. Either way, a lot of people know the story about Abraham and Isaac. And if you don't, God tells Abraham that he can be the father of all the nations, but all he has to do is sacrifice his son. He has to take his son. Battery's running low, so on the next break, during the meditation, I'm going to try and plug up a charger. So God has a negotiation with Abraham. He has to sacrifice his son on the mountain. He has to go up to the mountain and kill his son. And in exchange, he will be the father of all nations. So Abraham's like, Isaac, pack up some stuff. We're going up the mountain. Take some of the mountain. Isaac's packing. Don't pack too much. Okay, blasphemy. Don't. Just pack a sandwich. So he goes up to the mountain, and God says, "Stop. It's okay. I see that you are a man of faith." And Abraham is declared the father of all nations. So I was watching a movie the other day, and there was a struggle between the husband and the wife in this movie because the son had committed a crime. And the father wanted to do everything he could to protect his son from the law. So he was like hiding evidence, and he was doing all this stuff. And the mother was like, "No, we have to go to the police. We have to tell the truth." And the father was like, "No, I'm going to protect my son." And she was like, "No, we have to do the right thing." And she was like a very religious person, and she felt like it was the right thing to do by God, by the law. And he repeated the story of Abraham and Isaac. And he says, "You know what nobody ever talks about when you hear that story? No one ever says, who would want a father like that?" And I thought, that's so true. Like, if you go on a picnic with your father, and after you're done eating your sandwich, he says, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to kill you now." And then for the rest of your life, he's like, "No, it's okay. We can just..." Like, what? Like, why didn't we ever question that story? Why do we? It's a story of faith, yes, but it's also a story.
Hideous story.
It's a story of a God that does not exist. There is not a God that wants us to suffer. The God of A Course in Miracles, the God of mystic studies, the God of the mystic's path is a true, loving, forgiving entity that just wants you to also be loving and true to yourself. You don't have to prove yourself by killing your offspring. There's no extreme needed. Who would want a father like that? Why did we grow up thinking that we had a father like that? That we had a God like that? We were raised with this fear of this God that was going to hurt us and condemn us and judge us. And the father of A Course in Miracles is saying, my only judgment of you is for you to please remember that you are my child, perfect and sinless. Yes, you've made mistakes. Yes, we've made mistakes. We're not saying that any of us are here in these bodies, in this experience, doing everything right. But as people on the sacred path, we have the right and the responsibility to look at ourselves and to make those adjustments. To make those adjustments within ourselves so that we can then, maybe tomorrow, do a little bit better. Love a little bit stronger. Forgive a little bit more readily. The more we practice that, the easier it will be. But the more we practice being resentful and upset with ourselves and upset with others, and that's what we put our focus on, then how can we see the love and the light? How can we see the Christ in each other? So we're bringing love in, we're sending love out, and we're trying not to make any exceptions, right? Not just the people that you resent, but also, we're going through some tough times right now. Yeah. We're going through some tough times. We've got, we've got October and November. Things are going to get ugly. People are going to say unkind things. There's going to be the political parties at war with one another. And I've never seen anything like it the way it is right now. Racism, misogyny, political divide, it's just at an all-time high. So instead of getting angry, we can be a different energy. We can be a different way of looking at things. We can be a helpful, hopeful voice. Still got to vote. Still got to do whatever you think is right. But we have to believe that we're going to be okay and that we are going to be the ones that help it to be okay. And we can only do that if we forgive ourselves and forgive others, because then we have the energy and the ability to do that. This is an exhausting time. This is an exhausting time. So if energy for nothing else, have energy for prayer, have energy for love, have energy for sending love and light out into the world. And just keep telling yourself and reminding yourself that you and all of us are going to be okay. That we're going to be okay. Which reminds me of a song. Remember a few weeks ago I was talking about how I had this prayer to know that everything's going to be okay, and I got in the car and this song came on and it was like, it's going to be okay. So, and I was like, oh, and then we had to play it for everybody. So I was telling a friend that story, and she said, oh yeah, I've heard that song. It's by Gene Johnson. I was like, no, it's by Tasha Lawton. No. So it turns out there's another song called It's Gonna Be Okay. And I thought, what better way to showcase that song, but right here, right now with you guys. So this is gonna be our meditation time. We're going to listen to the song. You're going to take time to just be centered and quiet. Now, as you know, the last few weeks we've been having some problems with technology. I don't know why, but in the event that you do not get to see the lyrics on here, just allow yourself to be in a quiet, still place. Don't go run off and get a half a sandwich, because you know what happened to Isaac. Just don't pack a bag. Just be here with us. Be here in the silence. Allow yourself to just be quiet. And if you can't see the words, maybe it's a distraction for all the words to be there. So just listen. We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay because we are going to be committed to doing this work. I believe in you. So let's see if it works. I hope you enjoy it. Let's see. Like I said, if you can't see it, at least you'll be able to hear it. It's cool.
That's all you've got to just be strong. And it's a fight just to keep it together. I know you think that you are too far gone, but hope is never lost. Hope is never lost. Hold on, don't let go. Hey, hold on, don't let go. Just stay one step closer, one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light, darling. You're gonna be okay. I know your heart is heavy from those nights. Just remember that you are a fighter, a fighter. You never know just what tomorrow holds. And you're stronger than you know. You're stronger than you know. Hold on, don't let go. Hey, hold on, don't let go. Just take one step closer, one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light, darling. One step closer, one foot in front of the other. You'll get through this. Just follow the light, darling. You're gonna be okay. When the night is closing, don't give up and don't give in. This won't last, it's not the end, it's not the end. You're gonna be okay. When the night is closing, don't give up and don't give in. This won't last, it's not the end, it's not the end. You're gonna be okay.
You're gonna be okay. We're all gonna be okay. We just have to believe in ourselves, have faith in our ability to truly do this work. To put one step in front of the other, to see ourselves as pure conduits of love and light, and to see others as that way too. So I think the lesson that follows this section is really helpful in continuing. Let's see, you like that card? I need tech assistance. Okay, so I think it was lesson 251. Let me double check here. Is lesson 251 follows? Yep, lesson 251 follows the essay. Okay, so let's go to lesson 251, which follows the essay on what is sin. And it says, I am in need of nothing but the truth. So we have a lot of needs as humans. We have human needs, but our spiritual self needs to be in touch with divine truth. Because once we're in touch with divine truth, everything else is just playground. You know, it's just fun if you get the stuff you want. You get everything you want, everything works out. That's great, you're living the happy dream. But what will get you to a place of true deep peace is to be in connection with the divine, to be a true conduit of the divine. So to be connected to the truth. It says, I sought for many things and found despair. Now do I seek for one thing, for in that one is all I need and only what I need. All that I sought before I needed not and did not even want. My only need I did not recognize, but now I see that I need only truth, and that all needs are satisfied, all cravings end, all hopes are finally fulfilled, and dreams are gone. Now that I have everything I need, now have I everything that I could ever want, and now at last I can find myself at peace. And the prayer that goes with that says, and for that peace, God, we give thanks. What we denied ourselves, you have restored, and only that is what we really want. So if we come back to the simplicity of it all, the simplicity of following this lesson around what is sin. It's just a mistake. I have to be rigorously honest with myself, to look at my mistakes, to be willing to look at my mistakes, to be willing to make changes, to be willing to forgive myself and to forgive others. Now, there's a cross-reference to this, and it's back in lesson 131. The interesting thing is that lesson 131 was in May. It was back in May. And even though we were meeting in May, we were like in the middle of all the chaos of the pandemic. That was at a time when a lot of us were still self-isolating. We were deep in the quarantine. And, we may have overlooked this lesson. There may have been some of these lessons, and I don't blame anybody. I was doing the same thing. Sometimes we got so caught up in the outside world that we didn't focus so deeply into our lessons. I mean, I could just be speaking for myself in a confession sort of way, but I think that all of us kind of had a little bit of faith shaken on the ground beneath us. And the one thing that really helped us keep it together was having this spiritual family, having this time together, having the reminder that, yeah, we are going to be okay. Yes, we're going to get through it. Yes, this is just spiritual incubation. So let's look back at what we were talking about in May. Lesson 131 said, who can fail who seeks to reach the truth? You see the correlation here? It's like, I only want the truth. Well, who can fail to find it if they truly seek it? So let's go to paragraph 3. It says, searching is inevitable here. Here meaning this life, here we are, searching. For this you came, all of us came, and you will surely do the thing you came for. But the world cannot dictate the goal for which you search unless you give it power to do so. In other words, we don't have to be distracted by fear. We don't have to be fearful of what is happening in the moment. We have our human reaction to it that is like, oh, I'm scared, I'm worried. But our deeper sense of knowing can be a peaceful place. And that sounds contradictory, and sometimes it feels contradictory, but have you ever been scared and knowing at the same time? Have you ever been sad and yet knowing at the same time? I know it happened for me, for instance, like when my father died. My father died very suddenly. He was killed in a car accident. And so my human self was going through shock, was going through sadness. And really for 6 months, I just stared at a wall. But there was a deeper knowing inside me, like that part of me that listens to the other voice, that knew that there was a bigger picture. I was feeling my human reactions, reactivity, sadness, the mournfulness of the experience. But if we can have those experiences with a deeper knowing, then we can find balance and not get bitter because of circumstances, not get worn out because of circumstances, not lose all hope because of circumstances, because something inside of us knows that there's a bigger picture here. Paragraph 4. Be glad that search you must. Be glad as well to learn you search for heaven and must find the goal you really want. No one can fail to want this goal and then to reach it in the end. God's child can only seek vainly, though he try to force delay, right? We try to force delay when we make those exceptions to our love. That's what the delay is. That's the mistake we make. when we decide that, well, I'm not worthy, or that other person's not worthy, that is delaying our true connection to Source. So it's kind of like the brother, our big brother Jesus, who's reading this. He's got our number, right? He knows that this is what we do, and so he's letting us know that that's what we have to work through. That's what we have to work on and work through.
I am like what Wapnick said right after that. He said Jesus once told Helen that when she does his will, he will uphold it, and when she does not, he will correct it. She cannot lose.
She can't lose. So what in case you didn't hear, Lisa was saying, she was reading something that Wapnick wrote, that Jesus told Helen, you can't lose, because I will help you to correct this. I will help you. If you don't attain the goal, it's because you haven't taken the steps to reach it. You know, it's kind of like if you're going to a friend's house. Pam lives in
Stop it.
Pam lives in Poinsett Heights, and she once went to visit my mom, may she be resting in peace, who lives in Margate. So my mom was waiting and waiting and waiting, and then Pam called her and said, I got lost. And my mother said, well, where are you? And she said,
What happened?
she was in Parkland. She was in Parkland. Now, I don't know, I can't laugh, because that's something that I would do too. I could easily land up in Parkland on my way to Margate. But you know what she did? She redirected herself and went to visit my mother. She still showed up. She still went there. It's that same thing on our spiritual path. We can decide, it's just, it's just too hard, and I'm so unworthy, so I'm just going to stay mired in my upsets and my resentment and my anger. Or we can recalculating route. She didn't have GPS at the time, apparently, but GPS tells us that. It says recalculating route. That's all we have to do. We have to recalculate our route. Don't beat yourself up because you went to Parkland, even though I'm bringing it up 8 years later, still. It's a great story to tell. Oh, actually, my mother spent her last dying days going, where's Pam? Is she in Parkland? I get that from her, that I'm not letting these stories go. It's a good story. Okay, so paragraph 6. Why wait for heaven? It's here today. It's here today. It's right here, right now. Time is the great illusion. It is past or future. So exactly right. When we are in our resentment, we are in the past. Heaven is now. What is heaven? A moment of peace. Just being at peace in the moment. When you find your way, when you realize, I just need to turn around. I just need to turn my car around and head back to Margate. And then we're going to finish with paragraphs 9 and 10. Today we will not choose a paradox in place of truth. Think about that. When you get, do I want to be in this paradox and this quagmire? You don't even get to use the word quagmire that much, but it's actually what it is that we do, how we're living. How could the child of God make room to take away the will of God? Take time to take away the will of God. 10. Leave such foolish thoughts like this behind and turn your mind to truth instead. No one can fail who seeks to reach the truth. And then I like this, the imagery that you see on paragraph 13 where it says, put out your hand and see how easily the door to heaven swings open with your one intent to go beyond it. Angels light the way so that all darkness vanishes, and you are standing in a light so bright and clear that you can understand all things. A tiny moment of surprise, perhaps, will make you pause before you realize the world you see before you in the light reflects the truth. You did not quite forget this while you were wandering away in dreams like the prodigal son, right? What did the prodigal son find when he came back home? That everything was exactly as he left it, a loving father. Everything he needed was there waiting for him. We are like that prodigal son. We are the prodigal sons and daughters. So it's time for us to raise our frequency. Raise our frequency. See yourself as connected to the divine. See yourself as an element of the divine, as a manifestation of the divine here on earth, in this body, walking through the halls, or wherever you work. Walking dogs, tending to people, hanging out, whatever it is you do. You can do it as a representation of the divine. Marianne Williamson says that you can build a church wherever you are. You can, wherever you are, can be a holy place, and that other people can be loved and welcomed into that place. So let's do that. Let's do that. I'm going to end with a fun song. Libby's on, doing MC Yogi for you, my friend, my grasshopper. All right, so everybody take a nice deep breath. Thank you for being here. I will do a couple of things from now on a weekly basis. Whatever songs that I present, I will put on the Miracles with a Twist page. It used to be I just sent it out to my text people, my people on my text group, but I'll put it on the page so you can see it more clearly and hear it again. And I'll also put the link for donations. So all of that will be on the Miracles with a Twist page tomorrow. Oh, I wasn't calling for donations, but thank you. They just show up. Anybody can feed that place where they are spiritually nurtured through financial expression of appreciation. So enjoy this last song and hold on for the final few words. This is called Breathe Deep by MC Yogi. And the video will play after this commercial. See if it's connected now. the video is very cool. I'm gonna post it later tonight so you can watch the whole thing in addition to the previous song that we did for the meditation. So thank you all for being here. Let's take a nice deep breath. Put our hands on our hearts. Feel our heartbeat. How wonderful it is to be together with our spiritual family. How wonderful it is to remember that we are loved, that we are seen and known deeply as beloved. Today we let go of ego thoughts. We let no ego thought direct our words or actions. Today I would hear but your voice, God. In deepest silence I would come to you to hear your voice and to receive your word. I have no prayer but this. I come to you to ask you for the truth. And truth is but your will, which I would share with you today. Amen. Amen to that. God bless you. See you next week. Love you.